Hello chess lovers and general public. In this life no one is saved from being a beginner, because in any discipline all experts and professionals had to start from the beginning. Some had the privilege of having a tutor to guide them, while others had to try their luck and learn on their own. In chess there are always those who have dedicated themselves to creating their own crazy plans and trying weird things. Like the scholar's mate, I know that there is nothing weird about trying the scholar's mate, but some beginners have taken it to the extreme. The scholar's mate, or rather the attempt to scholar's mate, is usually given after e4 e5 queen h5 attacking the f7 square and threatening to capture at e5. I find surprising how many times the black player does something like g6 attacking the queen without realizing that they're not only hanging the e5 pawn but also the rook due to the double attack. Others play knight f6 thinking of attacking and expelling the queen, but they don't realize that they're giving up the e5 pawn, although if you play this intentionally it's okay, because this line is known as the kitty counter gambit, so the problem is not being aware that you're hanging a pawn. Here the best move objectively speaking is knight c6 developing a piece and defending e5. White plays bishop c4 adding a second attacker to the f7 point, but more importantly, threatening queen takes f7 checkmate. The truth is that nowadays nobody falls into this trap anymore, and those who do are because they don't look on YouTube, because there are plenty of tutorials explaining how to defend the scholar's mate. Now that e5 is defended, g6 is the correct move. It attacks the queen and blocks the path of her to f7. Queen f3 renewing the threat of checkmate on f7, but more than anything the queen is placed here because she doesn't want to return to d1, knight f6 placing the knight between the queen and the f7 pawn. And now the normal thing is that the game continues with something like knight e2 to avoid knight d4, bishop g7 short castle with a not so big but considerable advantage for the black pieces. Instead of doing that, many exaggerate it and take the scholar's mate and the threats to f7 to the next level, with blunders like queen b3 threatening to enter on f7 for the third time. And it's true that a bad plan is better than no plan at all, but don't go overboard, because this is easily punished by knight d4 attacking the queen, while keeping an eye on c2, and if bishop takes f7 check, king e2, then, from which square can the overloaded white queen continue to defend the bishop and the c2 square? Queen c4 is the only option, but this is useless because after b5 the queen can't stretch any further and must abandon the bishop. And if white doesn't capture on f7 but does something like queen d3, it doesn't solve their problems at all. d5, e takes d5 bishop f5, and now nobody can stop the black knight from entering c2. Returning to the position after knight f6, sometimes white is so eager to give the scholar's mate that they play g4 with the intention of then playing g5 to attack the knight on f6, which is pinned. This is a plan that seems obvious, but that sadly or fortunately, depending on the side you're on, it's easily punished again with the move knight d4 double attack. Attacking the queen and the c2 square, the queen can go to d1 to defend from there both c2 and g4. But remember that the one who covers too much squeezes little. d5 with gain of time because it attacks the white bishop and at the same time it discovers the attack of the black bishop on the g4 pawn. E takes d5, it's no better if white captured d5 by bishop, and the move that destroys white is bishop takes g4 check to the queen. There are only 3 ways to block it and they all lose. If bishop e2 there is queen takes d5, black has an extra pawn and a brutal attack. If f3 comes knight e4 and white can't capture either the knight or the bishop, for example if f takes g4, black has mate in 2 starting with queen h4 check. And if they try to block with the knight, the black pieces have this beautiful checkmate, knight f3 check, king f1 is the only move, and then bishop h3 checkmate. Back again to the position after knight f6, sometimes white goes so far as to try something like a 3 in order to get the bishop to the a2 square and then move the queen to b3, forming a battery again, this time with the queen ahead, ready to enter f7, and if black prevents it, the tricky white queen still ends up capturing a pawn by queen takes b7, even so black is still winning. But all those complications could have been avoided by playing knight d4. In this position after knight f6 white shouldn't try anything funny, because the threat of knight d4 is very strong, so white should avoid it either with c3 but preferably by playing knight e2, which also develops a piece and prepares short castling. We have reached the end. The lesson is that trying the scholar's mate is kind of fine, but the bad thing is to overdo it. Have a good time, stay alert, bye.